We are so excited that you've all joined us tonight. Welcome. My name is Kayla Bisbee, and I am the Family Outreach Coordinator managing PJ Library and Shalom Baby for the Jewish Federation of Greater New Haven. I am also the mom to a very busy almost 4-year-old. So on a personal level, I'm quite excited about this discussion and believe it is very timely, as I know all of you do as well. So if you are comfortable in the chat, I would love if you would take a moment just to introduce yourself, share where you are joining us from tonight, and maybe how old are your kids. I know that we had folks who registered from all over Connecticut, in DC, New York, and New Jersey. So welcome wherever you are joining us from today. We are so excited to have the parenting mentor, author, and mom, Susan G. Groner, and our moderator, Yale Child Study Center professor and local dad, Eli Lebowitz, with us this evening. This event is brought to you by Ezra Academy in partnership with PJ Library of Greater New Haven, which is powered by the Jewish Federation of Greater New Haven. We want to thank our sponsors, Prisma, Sound OBGYN, the Spa and Beverly Levy Early Learning Center at the JCC of Greater New Haven, and Jewish Family Services of Greater New Haven. Quickly before we get started, I just want to make sure that all of the Jewish kids in your life from birth to 8.5 years old are signed up for PJ Library, and tweens that are 8.5 to 12 years old are signed up for PJ Our Way. Each child can get an age-appropriate Jewish children's book delivered to your doorstep every single month, and we'll get emails about events just like this, and even fun kiddo events in person, outside, all of those great things. So make sure to encourage your friends and family to subscribe for books. And you should know that this month, current subscribers can get a $5 gift card for every friend they refer who subscribes. So check your email if you haven't gotten that yet. PJ Library is an international program locally subsidized by our Jewish Federation annual campaign and a group of generous local donors. So to all of you who give, thank you. I'd also like to thank my friend and colleague, Lindsay Barger, for doing an outstanding job helping with our tech this evening. Please message her or myself should you need anything. And now I would like to welcome Jessica Kazak, Ezra Academy's Director of Strategic Initiatives and Enrollment, to introduce herself and share just a little bit about Ezra before we get started. Jessica has been instrumental in making this evening a success and is a PJ Library parent as well. So thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Kayla. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. I'm at Ezra Academy. If I don't already know you, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being here. Ezra Academy is in Woodbridge, Connecticut. We serve preschool through 8th grade. If you are at all interested in learning more about our Montessori preschool to kindergarten or 1st to 8th grade, I welcome you to come for a virtual tour. I'll put my email in the chat, but I absolutely love to arrange a Zoom with you. And just one quick thing about tonight, Kayla and I'll speak for both of us. We are so excited that we're able to offer this event. A lot of the planning and preparation has reminded us just how nice it is to meet with other young parents. Kayla and I have formed, I think, a great partnership already, and we are very excited that we were granted a grant through Prisma to allow us to collaborate and run 4 events this year. So throughout the year, you will see other events that we will be inviting you to, hopefully in person. We are really hopeful that we'll able to form deeper connections with all of you. So thank you for being here tonight and welcome. And next, I am going to introduce Ellie, who actually is one of our Ezra parents. So I'm just going to read off of his amazing bio here. Ellie, the Professor Lebowitz studies and treats childhood and adolescent anxiety at the Yale Child Study Center, where he directs the program for anxiety disorders. His research focuses on the development, neurobiology, and treatment of anxiety and related disorders, with special emphasis on family dynamics and the role of parents in these problems. Dr. Lebowitz is the lead investigator on multiple funded research projects, the author of research papers, books, and chapters on childhood and adolescent anxiety. Like I said, he's one of our current Ezra parents. He has 3 children at our school, and he has been an amazing partner to Ezra, as well as his wife, Mira, who also is part of our outreach committee. So his family has been great to us, and we're so excited that he's here tonight.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. I'm so happy to have this opportunity. Yes, very proud Ezra, very proud Ezra dad of 3 boys, one soon to be an Ezra alum. So definitely happy to be part of that community, but I'm really excited to be able to introduce parenting mentor and guru par excellence, Sue Groner, and to be able to talk about this wonderful book, Parenting with Sanity and Joy. Wow, who wouldn't want those 2 things in their lives? Sanity and joy. It makes you feel better just to hear the title of the book. And I was thinking that it's my job to introduce Sue, but when you introduce somebody, an introduction, it's usually somebody that you know telling you about somebody that you don't know. But I realize it's entirely possible that there are more people here today who know Sue than who know me. So it's possible that she's introducing me, even though it's my job to be introducing her. But I really, I'm not going to read a bio, but what I will say is it's worth taking a look at Sue's website, the Parenting Mentor. Did I get that right, Sue? The Parenting Mentor.com. And I took a couple of minutes to look it over and to read through her personal story and how she sort of came to be doing what she's doing. And I'm just going to tease it here rather than giving it away, but I would encourage everybody to visit that website. And there's a lot of resources there, but reading that story is actually quite inspiring. And today we want to focus primarily on this book. And one of my favorite things in reading this book is just how practical, how down to earth and real life the 101 tips that you can find in it really are, things that you can start applying today in your life and with your kids. And it takes me back to the day my wife and I discovered that she was pregnant with our first child, or as I like to say to my son, when he was just a line. And on that day, no joke, we went out and bought, the What to Expect book. And I think we did that because when you're going through parenting, when you're expecting, like you're just thirsty for some advice, for some help, for somebody with experience, common sense, and wisdom to share that with you. And you just feel the need for that. And that's what I think about when I read this book, is just how practical it really is. So my first question to you, Sue, is how did you come to be doing this? Where does this, how does somebody become a parenting mentor? How does that happen?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people out there who take classes and become coaches. And, what I wanted to do was really focus on the parent rather than necessarily the parenting. And so my goal as the parenting mentor is to help parents be happier and more relaxed, just to reduce the everyday stress and anxiety that, inevitably comes from being a parent. And part of that comes from the fact that, like, when my kids were in the middle years, they're now 24 and 22. When they were in the middle years, I was one of those anxious, stressed out parents. And as they got older, I started to realize what a waste of my energy that was. Like, all that anxiety and stress was really for nothing. And I wanted to be able to share that, and the learning that I did throughout my mothering, so to speak, my parenting with my kids. I learned so much, and I was able to figure out ways to really not just reduce the stress and anxiety, but to kind of get rid of conflict with your kids, how to communicate, give them more opportunities to do things by themselves. So I didn't have to do it anymore, kind of, and without any angst. And I just felt I really wanted to share that. And I love being able to like see in parents' faces when we work together, how like it's just a visual, physical relaxation. They're like, oh, that's all I need to do. Like I can do that, or I don't have to do that.
That's amazing. I was thinking in preparation for this, I was thinking like, what's the one tip that I want to pull out, that I want to highlight from this book? And I was going over it, and I actually found it hard. I found it hard to say like, this is the one or that's the one. And as I thought about it, what I realized is that part of why I found it so hard is that they actually hang together. They really like what I think you've created in this book is a sense of balance. And in particular, I think there's a balance between two pulls that a lot of parents will feel, and that to a certain extent reflect also a pendulum that swings in our society. And what I mean is the pull on the one hand to allow independence, to allow individualization, to let your child be who they are and to express themselves in their way and live through things independently. And on the other hand, there's also that pull to maintain some control, to stay on top of things, to sometimes guide or sometimes protect. And I think a lot of parents really struggle with finding the balance between those two things. And like I said before, I think there's also a certain sort of pendulum swing at the societal level where we go through these different phases. Sometimes the pendulum swings a little bit toward the more protective, the more controlling, the more involved, and sometimes it swings further away in the other direction. And so I guess what I want to ask you is, what's your philosophy when it comes to that? And what I'm perceiving is this sense of balance, but what would you say is, what's your philosophy, or what do you teach parents? Like, where do you fall between those two things?
Well, the first thing I always like to say, and I can't see everybody's faces, but I'm assuming everyone's going to sort of have like a little smile and a little chuckle when they hear this, is that parenting is not an 18-year engineering project. Exactly. And we think we don't think that that's what we're doing, but when we step back and say, oh, wait, maybe that is what I'm doing, right? We want them to, regardless of how old they are, even in the womb, we'll play classical music and we'll do everything we can, like from the very moment that we are able to do something to make them the smartest, the best, the strongest, the brightest, and the best behaved, and all the things that we sort of have these expectations for. And I'm sure all of you know that doesn't happen, right? You can't engineer another human being. And when you try, you're just going to come up with conflict. If you're trying to do something with your computer and it's not working, you want to take that computer at some point and like just throw it on the floor. And you can't do that with your child, but you get frustrated and you get angry that they're not listening. They're not doing what you expect. They didn't do that well on a test. They're not, picking up the stuff off their floor. They're not listening. They're not putting on their shoes. They're not brushing their teeth. They're not stopping, getting off of, their screen. Like there's so many things. And that's hard, but we can't engineer and we can't control a human being. And so I kind of like to take that step back and I say, instead of doing that, why don't we look at our role as raising children who are resilient and self-reliant and have good problem-solving skills and good coping mechanisms? And if you buy into that, then your parenting sort of starts to change, and you will notice that you will be happier and more relaxed because the things that you saw as problems all of a sudden become these opportunities for your child to start to become a little more resilient, to develop coping mechanisms, etc.
But don't parents just naturally want their child to feel happy, to feel like to have as smooth an experience as possible, to not have to go through all of those difficult experiences that they might have gone through themselves? I mean, I think if we were to poll parents and just say, like, what do you want for your child? I think so many parents would probably say, I want them to be happy. Maybe as the number one or number two, number three, I want them to be healthy and I want them to be happy. Is that the wrong question? I mean, or the wrong goal? Are we thinking about that the wrong way? What do you think?
I don't think so, but I think we're assuming the definition of happy is different. And so, you know, I'm basically a happy person. Am I happy all the time? You know, no, I'm not, you know, but to me, happiness, my inner core happiness is that knowing no matter what happens in my life, good, the bad, the ugly, whatever that is, that I will be able to handle it. And so that gives me the sort of peace of mind for myself. I know I'll get through it. And so if we sort of look like, I want my child to be happy, but instead of thinking that, I want to know that my child has the ability to handle being unhappy, frustrated, disappointed, worried, all these normal human emotions that we all have and will continue to have. And if we don't give our kids the opportunities to feel those things, they're not going to develop those coping mechanisms. They're not going to develop resilience. They're not going to have problem-solving skills.
So it's not just how do I make them happy, it's how do I get them better at being able to handle the times when things aren't that great, maybe.
Yeah,
or
and
you have a challenge.
if you like buy into this thing, so we all want to keep circling back to the parent being happier, more relaxed. If I don't feel it's my job any longer to fix my child's negative emotions, their adversity, then I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to like either think ahead. If this happens, my child's going to be really disappointed and they're not going to be able to deal with that. So I have to arrange things in advance. Or if they do, then I have to do something really special and make them feel better about it. No, you know, what we do need to do is we need to validate how they feel. Yeah, I don't blame you for being disappointed. That makes perfect sense, but we don't need to fix it.
I think we think about teaching, like we're talking about teaching in a sense, right? Like I'm teaching you to cope, or I'm teaching you skills. And a lot of times when we think about teaching children, you know, we might envision or imagine these like beautiful Hallmark teaching moments, right? You sit down next to, it's like television shows, you know, you sit down next to your child's bed and it's like, son, when I was your age, I went through blah, 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 and soon you have a hug and everything feels better, and we go to commercials. But we also know that children aren't only learning in those moments, right? We might have those moments, but they're learning all the time. And not only by listening to what we're saying, but also by watching. What are we doing? How are we handling my frustration, my messed up work thing, or my argument with mom or dad, or whatever? What is the role of modeling here when it comes to imparting those kinds of lessons, those coping abilities, or what's the role of modeling in parenting with sanity and joy?
Yeah, I think that modeling is so incredibly important with this kind of thing. And so, if you have a really young child, or, even if you have a teenager, it doesn't matter. But I think it's important that instead of hiding your own emotions, like a lot of parents, and I see this a lot, don't want to let their kids know how they're feeling if it's not happy. You know, oh, I'm like going through so much, but I don't want to show my child. Show your child. Let your child see that you're frustrated, that you're worried about something that's happening. I mean, within reason and age appropriate for your child. Let them see that you're frustrated. You're looking all over the house for your phone. You couldn't find it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated right now. I've been looking all over for my phone and I can't find it. So you're showing them that you have this emotion. They're saying, my mom has this, or my dad has this emotion. An adult is feeling this way. It's okay. And then they see you a little while later and you're fine. You've gotten through it. And so if you had a plan to go out to dinner with your 3 of your best friends and something happened and they had to cancel, you can say, wow, I am so disappointed. I was really looking forward to that. So much fun for me to go out with my friends. And I've been looking forward to this for the last month. And now it's canceled. I'm really disappointed. And, you know, for a younger child, you're starting, even if you recognize it in them and you say, wow, you look really frustrated. And you say, well, I'm really frustrated. You're starting to teach them a vocabulary of feelings. And not just the words, but the actual feelings. And you're saying to them, this is okay. I understand that you feel this way and why you feel this way. And oftentimes making that emotional connection with your child, saying, I see how frustrated you are, is all you need to. Can you guys hear me?
We lost you for a second, but I think it's okay now.
Okay, good. Because I saw something pop up. Yeah, you don't need to like go into a whole thing, but you can say, yeah, I get it. It's hard going, you're worried. I used to, when my kids were little, I used to say to them, oh, sweetie, don't be sad. It's okay. Don't worry, it'll be fine. And then I thought, like, what am I doing? I'm saying, don't be sad. Don't worry. Like, but you're going, you know, but they were worried anyway. Right. And, you know, of course you're worried. You're going to a new school. You're going to a new activity. You don't know the people there. You don't know what to expect. That's very normal to feel the way you do. I know you'll get through it, but I don't blame you for feeling this way.
You reminded me as you were speaking of a passage in one of what's her name? Jessica Benjamin, I think, is a psychoanalyst who writes really kind of thoughtful books about parents and family and relationships. And she has a really interesting passage that struck me when I read it. She says, what does a parent do when a child is sad? Say you have a young child and they feel sad. What will a lot of parents do? They'll say something like, oh, you're so sad right now, something like that. And what she says is, what is the parent doing by doing that? Well, they're kind of doing two things, because on the one hand, they're showing, I get it, like you are sad right now, and they're giving a word to it, which is part of what you're talking about, is like giving that vocabulary. But then she also makes another point, which is a little more subtle, which is they're also saying to the child, I don't feel exactly as sad as you do in this moment, because every child knows when my parent is really sad, they don't do, oh, I'm so sad right now. Maybe they shut down a little bit, or they look upset, or maybe even angry, or something like that. So by almost caricaturizing it a little bit, we're saying, I get what you're experiencing right now, and I'm giving those words to label it and to name it. But also, I'm able to feel something else in this moment, and by doing that, I can also contain a little bit better what you are feeling. Because if I feel just as sad as you do, then who's going to help both of us? But if I can see what you're feeling and still be okay, then maybe I can contain it, and maybe I can show you that it's possible to get past that feeling and to, you know, end up feeling okay. So I love what you said about the about that modeling on yourself also, right? Like maybe you don't have to hide the fact that you get angry sometimes, or you get frustrated sometimes, or you get sad sometimes, because that's part of life, and it's okay to feel those things. And also we can get past feeling those things. And I have another question, but I'm going to pause for a second just to encourage anybody who is on the Zoom and wants to ask a question. This is literally your opportunity to ask questions of theparentingmentor.com. So you could either write a question in the chat if you have a question, or in a few minutes, maybe we'll even open up. You could just come on and ask your question. So I don't want to monopolize all of Sue's time, but I do have to ask one question because, part of what happens when you read through a book like this is you also realize everything you're doing wrong. And one of your, I just have to ask you specifically about one of your tips, because it says, don't send your kid to their room. And then I think about all the times that I send my kids to their room when they're not behaving as we would like. So tell us, why shouldn't you send a kid to their room? What's wrong with that?
Well, it's the same idea really as a timeout. It's like when a child is acting up, yeah, it's really hard for us to have to deal with that and listen to it and look at it. And it's like, just go to your room, get out of my face. I don't want to see you. I don't want to deal with you. You go figure it out. And that at that moment when they're feeling that's the last thing they need. What they do need is for us to say, wow, I can see you're really angry, or I can see how you're feeling. I don't need to know why necessarily. And I don't need to say, well, I know you can't have that and whatever, you're not allowed to. Like, we just need to say, I see how angry this is making you. And if you can, and if they're open to it, just give them a really big hug, like a really big, tight hug. And then again, you're saying, I see you. I see how you're feeling, and I love you, and I care about you. And I think that just the sending to the room or the timeout is it's counterproductive. It may make you feel better for a minute because they're away from you, but it's kind of counterproductive in my opinion. It's sort of like, I like the whole concept of the time in. So when you see your child you see something starting to percolate a little bit, and you're like, oh God, I can see it. There's a tantrum going to happen soon. Catch it in advance, be proactive and preemptive, and say, wow, it looks like something's going on. Maybe you could use a time in right now. And you teach them what that means. And it means like, I'm going to give you a hug. We're going to snuggle. We're going to do something that, is going to calm you down and make you feel better. And it could just reading a book together. It could be singing a song. It could just be sitting on the couch, holding.
I think we lost your audio again, unless it's just me, but.
Hold on. Okay. Am I there?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then you'd be surprised, like you can stop that from happening. And then you don't have to deal with the tantrum, and you don't have to get yourself all worked up and crazy. And now you're back to being a happier, more relaxed parent.
So it's kind of the opposite of send to your room, right? It's closeness instead of distance. In that moment where you're sort of feeling like, okay, I don't want to be anywhere near you. Maybe that's actually the moment where your kid actually needs you near or close, rather than in that distance. Okay, I will have to. I will have to better my ways,
or at least research that and let me know what happens.
Well, that's true. Well, before I could say, then we have to run like a clinical trial.
Yeah, exactly.
Before I can say anything. Well, I'll run the randomized controlled trial at home, and the question will be which kid will be randomized to the go to your room group. But maybe I'll let them figure that. Maybe I'll let them figure that out. I wonder what's a personal anecdote that, and I'm not, I don't want to put you on the spot, but so much of what we learn as parents, I think, we learn through our lives, right? Like I learned more about parenting from my children than I did from anything else in my professional or whatever, life. I wonder what stands out in your memory as whether it's recent or not, as like a, what could you share from your personal life?
There were a few things that like, I recall them, like the moment that it happened, and it was like, oh yeah, there were a couple. One is, and it led to tips in the book. One is like, your child is not a mini me. And, we have our kids and I kind of are excited to see like, wow, look, I created something in the likeness of myself, and yet we don't. Like, we really don't. They may look like us and they're not going to necessarily think like us. They may not have the things we like. They might have different tastes. They might have hate one sport and we love another. And, this happened when I used to love to play the piano. I used to be told, stop playing, stop practicing. You got to go do something else or come for dinner or whatever. And my daughter, who had begged to play the piano, and of course I was thrilled, it didn't like practicing so much and she just wasn't that into it. And one day I said to her, Victoria, it seems to me like you're not really enjoying playing the piano. And she's like, Mom, she's like, I like it. I just don't like it as much as you liked it. So, I don't have to like everything as much as you. And she was like 7 or 8 at the time. And I'm like, oh, you're a wise girl, And another time, this was also with my daughter, and I took this lesson and used it with my son. She was in high school and she was trying to figure something out. And I was, of course, trying to figure out how I could help her, whatever. And I went in her room and I'm like, Victoria, this great idea for you. And she's like, Mom, stop. It's like, I don't want to hear it. Because it could be a great idea, but I'm not going to do it because I want to figure this out by myself. Let me figure this out by myself. And boy, that was also like a real moment for me. And, it got me to start, instead of figure like it's not my role to come up with the ideas, it's not my role to fix it. I started to change my language around, hey, if you're interested and you want to brainstorm ideas together, I'm around, I'm available, or if they ask me what they should do, I would say, well, I don't know, what do you think? It's also it's incredibly respectful to your children when you ask that question.
It really, well, you have some wise kids. And I think that those are just terrific, really terrific anecdotes. They really resonate with me. And they connect to another feeling that I had as I was reading this book, which is, yes, this book is about parenting with Sanity and Joy, but so much of what you're talking about in this book is actually not only applicable to parenting, right? That it is to so many other relationships, whether it's your partner, whether it's your friend, whether it's your colleague. I mean, some of them might be more specific to parenting. I guess you wouldn't send your colleague to their room, but so much. And those anecdotes are exactly the kind of thing that I'm thinking about, because it's not really only with our kids that we sometimes jump to, here's a solution, when maybe that's not what you're looking for from me right now, or we jump to assuming that you have to think the way I do or like the things that I like. So I think, you could take this book and drop the word parenting and say living with Sanity and Joy, or
that's nice.
People in
one of the things, like when you think about adult relationships that we have, if you come home after or you've had a really bad day and you tell your partner, wow, it's such a bad day. This happened and this happened and this happened. And that person was so nasty and whatever. You don't want them to say, wow, well, did you call so-and-so? Did you talk to that person? Well, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And maybe you should have. It's like, that's the last thing, because when someone says that to us, we feel like it's judgment. right? And that we didn't think enough ourselves to be able to do that. All we want is for them to say, oh, sweetie, I'm sorry you had such a bad day. Let me give you a hug. Let me pour you a glass of wine. That is it. And that is what our kids want. And if we can remember that, what we want ourselves and what our partners don't, and also how to treat our partners with that same thing, we're all going to be happier.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. So I have so many questions, but I'm seeing some questions that are coming up from our audience as well. And I want to make sure that we allow some time for that. Maybe Kayla, should I just read maybe a couple of these questions from the chat?
Absolutely,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so here I'm just going in order really, but here's one. Somebody around this I think is going to be familiar to a lot of parents. What about sibling fights? And this parent wrote, my girls are 18 months apart, so they share most things and they tend to fight. What is your advice to parents on they're fighting again?
Yeah, okay, so my advice is that, and you need to tell them that this is going to happen. You sit them down and say, hey, guys, you know what? We don't need to get involved in this stuff anymore. We're now getting out of this sibling. When you guys are fighting, you can figure this out on your own. So I just want you to know that we're not going to interfere, right? So the next time they come and she did this or she did that, you can just say, oh, okay. Literally, I know probably everyone's laughing, but just say, oh, you don't care. Sibling rivalry, the basis of it really, and there's a great book called Siblings Without Rivalry. It talks about how the basis of sibling rivalry is these kids are trying to see who the parent loves more. So sometimes one child will set up a situation, be annoying to the other child who then hits them, right? And then the hit child, mommy, she hit me. Mommy comes to the rescue of the hit child. The one who hit is getting in trouble, right? Where in the one who's getting the love was the one who instigated it, knowing that. But we as parents only see the hitting part. And so, no, okay, unless it's really bad, if there's yelling and screaming going on, because that is really unpleasant to listen to, you say to your kids, guys, you have 5 minutes to work this out. And if you can't, you need to go outside and finish it out there. Because I don't want to hear it. You're allowed to be angry at each other. You're allowed to go and yell at each other if that's how you choose to be. But I don't have to hear it. If you're in the car, pull over. I'm getting out of the car. You have 5 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever you want, to figure this out. And not angrily, just calmly, because you don't want them to have that kind of emotional control over you. Guys, I see you're fighting. I'm getting out of the car. You have 3 minutes. That's it. And just first of all, doing the timeout will calm them down a little bit, but you're teaching them how to figure this stuff out on their own. And sometimes when they're not fighting, you can say, hey, let's talk about the things that you guys fight about a lot. How do you think you can work this out so that you don't fight? And let them come up with some ideas on their own. The other part you mentioned sharing. Sharing is a great thing, but everyone's entitled to have their own special stuff that nobody gets to touch. You share, but you don't have to share it all. And that, and again, is another piece of respect for each child. Give them a special box that they put their stuff in that no one can touch. They can change that up every week. They can change it up every day. It doesn't really matter. But that stuff is off limits. When that stuff's off limits, everything else is free for all.
So it's okay to decline the role of the judge or the police when
it's really important to do that, I think, because what you're doing is then you're kind of pitting one kid against the other, and you don't really know what transpired, and usually the kid who's getting hurt knows exactly how to push that other child's buttons.
There are two questions that I think really kind of hang together and maybe follow also from what you were just talking about. But one person wrote, I have a question about parents giving themselves a timeout. Do you have the same opinion as giving the child a timeout? And then the other question, I'm just going to tell you both because I think they sort of go together. The other question was, somebody wrote, a lot of these techniques seem to require a lot of parental restraint. And I'm going to put in parentheses regulation as to go alongside restraint. And sometimes it's hard to control your own emotions before you can address and support your child's feelings. So how can you give your child a time in, for example, like you were describing, if you personally need a time out?
So, okay, that's a great question. Let me answer the first one first about a parental timeout. To me is I need some time to myself. I didn't do something wrong, but I really need that break. And that is okay to communicate to your kids and to anyone else in your household. And I also think, like with the sibling stuff, that your children should know that it's okay for them to also say, I need a little alone time. And instead, and teach them this, that it's normal when you're living under the same roof with people, you can love them, but you can also find them a pain in the you know what, and be annoyed by them. And that's totally normal and okay. And instead of saying, I hate you, or hitting them, or get away from me, you're a jerk, tell them to say, I need a little alone time now. And then they can go and have their alone time. And it's really like, it's a game changer, and you may need to help them remember this sometime. When that's happening, say, wow, looks like you might need a little alone time right now. What do you think? It's not punitive. Like you can never say you need alone time, because then it defeats the whole purpose. But everyone needs a little time to themselves. When your child is acting out, like the time in thing, a lot of the time it's like you want to catch it if you can. If your child really goes like off the rails, so to speak, and it's driving you crazy, I get that feeling. But if you can say, hey, I see how hard this is for you, and give them this hug and really hold them tight when they're going through something, you're going to feel so much better. It will help you significantly as much as it will help your child. And you'll feel like, oh, wow, look what just happened. That's amazing. It was really able to help my child. And I helped myself. I feel better now too.
Yeah, I think people are really picking up on this theme of time in and time out and time away. I'm going to read you a comment from, I think it's Shari in the chat, and just give your what's your reaction. So they wrote, would you consider that teaching your child to take a break in the heat of conflict prepares them well for conflict as an adult, and maybe teaches them to respect that other people may not be ready to make amends in the heat of the moment, and that sometimes we need to give them space and time before attempting to repair?
Yes, I think that's a great thing. I think it leads to only positive stuff. What about you, Ellie? What do you think?
Yeah, I think definitely. I like the notion of repair. I like the notion of if I wronged somebody, if I did something, I broke somebody's something, I hurt their feelings. I think teaching children about not only apologizing for the negative thing, but actually making some kind of reparation for the harm that you have done is really important. But I also think this point is really well taken, which is, yeah, not every moment is the right moment to do that. And sometimes you need to cool off before you're able to take that step, and trying to force it in that moment is not always going to lead to the result that you want. And so it does make sense to me that teaching a child that they may need time for themselves may help them to also understand that other people sometimes need time, and you can't expect everybody to be aligned with your emotional state at every moment. So I think it definitely makes sense to me as well.
And you know, the same thing can happen, like your kid might come home and say, wow, so-and-so and so-and-so got in a big fight today, you know, and then ask them questions. Well, what, do you know what it was about? Do you know why? Like what, you know, if you were in that instance, like what would you have maybe advised them? How would you maybe have handled it? Would you have handled it differently? Do you think your friend could have said something, or what do you think your friend could do now to make things better? You know, so it's taking it away from them personally is also helpful to get them to think about things like that.
And a lot of what you just said and some of the other things also, these are like so valuable and important conversations to be having. But sometimes having a conversation, the idea of having a meaningful conversation with your kid about what happened to them that day or the difficult thing that they're experiencing, sometimes that is actually quite challenging. What is your advice for how do you approach having those conversations? I know from my experience, sometimes I really want to have that kind of conversation with my kid, and they're not really into it and they're not really up for it. How do you start a conversation like that?
Well, I think you know, you can certainly try to have the conversation. If they really don't feel like talking about it, you can say, hey, I can see that you don't feel like talking about it now. You know, when you're ready, I'd love to, you know, just listen to you, and you know, we can talk through it if you want. But otherwise, if you see they're having a hard time and they're not someone who's going to say, oh my gosh, you can't believe what happened and I'm so upset, maybe talk about something that upset you that day or recently that you hadn't shared. And I think when you put yourself in the vulnerable spot and talk about it, they may go, oh yeah, you know, and today this happened to me. You know, even when you want to get your kids to talk, like I think, you know, asking that question, like, how was school today? Is the answer you get. Like, I mean, if you spent your whole day at work doing all these things and all this meetings, so honey, tell me about your day today. You don't want to rehash everything that happened, right? Maybe there's one anecdote. And so if you're sitting at dinner, say, you know, you could say, did anything funny happen? Did something happen today that made you laugh? You know, and maybe they don't remember, but you can say, oh my gosh, guys, the funniest thing happened to me today, where I saw these people and it made me laugh so hard. And then you'll see they'll want to start saying, yeah, well, and this happened to me. And then another one said, this happened to me. It's kind of going to get them, warm up the juices a little bit.
Yeah, so it goes back, I guess what you're saying is it goes back a little bit to the respecting where they are right now. Maybe it's not the moment where you thought was the right moment for the conversation, and letting them know you are interested, but also are patient or can respect that. And some modeling, maybe creating like a culture, a family where we talk about these kinds of.
If you get the answer like, how was school today? Or what did you do today? Nothing, you know, or I don't remember. Like, okay, we know that it's not true that nothing happened. And we also know that they do remember. To me, like I would say, oh, it seems to me like you don't really feel like talking about this right now, which is totally fine. End of subject. Or I could just share something that happened in my day if I want to have a conversation.
That's great. I think I'm being alerted to the fact that I might have skipped one question in the chat. Help me out, Jessica or Kayla, help me out. Where is what did I?
So Adam had a question referring to how do we show emotion to our children in an age appropriate way that's not going to cause them anxiety?
Well, I'll answer a little bit, but then Ellie, you'll probably be better at answering this question than me, since this is your expertise. Yeah, I think just using the words like you know, if something terrible was happening, you know, I wouldn't want to be sharing that with my children, you know, if I was worried that something might be happening to me, but I would want to, and the everyday stuff, I can say I'm frustrated or I'm in a, you know what? I'm in a bad mood right now. It's nothing to do with anything. I don't even know why I feel that way. Maybe I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, which is a really funny thing to teach kids, especially little kids who do wake up in a bad mood, which people that happens, that you say, maybe let's get back in, why don't you get back in bed and get up on the other side of the bed? And like, then they laugh and now you like made light of this, but it's still like, yeah, it's okay to feel that way. You don't have to be nasty, but just, I'm just not in that mood today. I'm sure I'm going to snap out of it by tomorrow, but.
Yeah. I have to say, I really like that answer. And also, sorry, Adam, for skipping the question before. It wasn't purposely. But, the other thing that I would add is, if you're feeling something, if you're feeling upset or you're feeling anxious yourself or you're feeling angry, your kid feels that anyway. It's not like the choice that you are making is not between will my child be aware or not be aware. It's the choice between will they be aware with some explanation and some framing of it, or will they just sense this feeling and not know what's going on? And that is more anxiety provoking for children. For me, when you say something like you just said, so when you say, this is what I'm feeling right now, and I'm sure tomorrow I'll snap out of it, that's very reassuring. The scary thing is not the fact that my parent might feel a strong feeling. They might feel angry, or they might feel sad, or they might feel anxious. That's not what's scary. What's scary is I can pick up my radar, my antenna, it's picking up on these feelings, but I don't know what's going on and I don't know to explain it and nobody's talking to me about it. That creates a lot more anxiety. So I would say I would not worry that sharing what you're feeling, and yes, you'll try to pick some age-appropriate words in order to share it, but I don't think that it's the sharing that actually causes the anxiety. I think it's the not sharing where you're just left with this raw feeling that I can pick up on and don't understand that causes a lot more stress and anxiety in children. And I know that our time is getting really, really, really short. So we're just at the end. And I want to, I guess, leave you with two things. One is, how do people learn more? Tell us where to go to learn more from, aside from everybody. I'm sure everybody has already ordered this book, but where else can they learn more from Sue Groner? And maybe what's one last thought that you'd like to leave us with?
Okay, well, you can find me on my website. On Instagram, I am at The Parenting Mentor. And if you want to listen more to me, you can subscribe to my podcast, which is called The Parenting Mentor Sessions, which is me working with a real parent who has a real challenge. And we talk for about 20 minutes and I help work them through it. So that's all available. I think there are like 48 of them so far. So plenty, I'm sure you can relate to a lot of them. Yeah, so that's that. And I guess the last thought, I'm going to leave you with is the first tip in my book, which is say yes with joy. And I don't mean say yes all the time, but if you're going to say yes, say, sure, honey, I'd be happy to, as opposed to, fine, I'll do it. Give me 5 minutes. And this will literally change how you feel about what that thing is that you're going to do. You're not like, even if you have to fake it, you will ultimately find it more joyful, and like, it's just an easy thing to do. If you have to do it and you're going to do it, don't make your kid feel bad and you won't feel bad. You'll actually now, if my kids ask me to drive them somewhere, or even to now it's to the airport, I'm like, sure, I'd love to. And, I really would love to at this point. I've gotten into so much, I've practiced that so much that, 50 minutes alone with my child is a joy for me. And then may not be for everything that you have to do, but it really does change the brain chemistry in some way. you could explain that. I can't, but it really does make a difference.
I really love that. The way I often say it to parents is if you always feel like someone's taking from you, then you sort of lose the feeling of giving, and that gets lost. And for your child, if they have to feel like they're taking from you, they also sort of lose the feeling of being given to. And I think that's a really wise tip. So,
and I have one more quick takeaway.
Please.
Everything that you're worried about right now, try not to worry about it. Your kids are little kids. Remember, they're little kids. All this save a lot of time and a lot of years to work through and change and develop and evolve. And it's a beautiful thing to sort of stand on the sidelines and watch this. And if you look at it like, wow, write down your worries now, and a year from now, write down the worries and go back and look at the last year's ones and go, really? Why did I do that? And you'll start to get into the swing of things like, okay, this is all going to work out.
Wonderful. Well, I think my job is at an end, but I want to say thank you, first of all, to you, Sue, for your work, first of all, and for being with us here tonight, and to everybody who was on, and to the hosts. And I don't know if there's a last word from any of our other hosts, but really, for me at least, and I'm sure for all of us, thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you. I loved my conversation with you, and I love learning from you also. So
I want to thank
everybody for joining
so much. This was an amazing, insightful, and thoughtful conversation, and I could have sat here and listened to the two of you conversate all night long. And Sue, I want to thank you for ending on your first tip about saying yes joyfully. I have to say, as soon as I got this book months ago, when I knew that I wanted to bring you in, I used that immediately with my 3-year-old. I'm going to give in and get for an ice cream. We're just going to say yes joyfully. And it made us have an amazing night. So thank you for that tip. It was beautiful. I want to encourage all of you, if you did not get this book already, I have a stack of them that are signed in my office. And if you're like me and you've lost the ability to sit down and read a book from start to finish, and you've switched to audiobooks and podcasts, listen to Sue's podcast and get this book, because you can pick it up and just read a tip. Just pick it up whenever you've got a second, just read a tip. It's phenomenal. And I can't say enough good things. So I also just want to mention that we have just entered the Hebrew month of Adar, which is all about increasing our joy. So I want to thank you for giving us some tips to help us to launch into Adar in that right spirit. And with that said, I want to finish our evening with pulling the winner of our drawing for our amazing, generous gift basket, which includes our one-on-one session with Sue herself, as well as a 3-month JCC family membership with a spa membership, and a free birthday party package at the JCC to take a little bit of load off of your back, as well as a whole bunch of other swag and goodies right over my shoulder. So let's spin.
I love this.
Elizabeth Kaplan! Yay! Mazel tov, mazel tov.
Do you have the basket there, Kayla?
What's that?
Do you have the basket you can show?
I do have the basket. Okay. Ooh. So just a quick sneak peek. It's packed full of swag and goodies and sparkling juice and all kinds of fun things. So Elizabeth, I will work with you to get this to you. And until then,
thanks, Kayla.
You're most welcome. Couldn't have gone to a better person. And I want to wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep an eye out for a follow-up email with all of the important links. Have a great night.
Thank you all
Bye.
for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sue.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Ellie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.